Hello, my name is Lorena Ferraz Diaz, and today I'm going to talk about the translation theory that caught my attention the most, which was the equivalence theory. Here's my student ID. So, before we start with discussing equivalence as a translation theory, we gotta remember that the translation studies refer to the theory, description, and application of translation. We have to point out that translation is not only an interlingual communication between languages, it is also an intercultural communication. Since when we're translating, we have to keep in mind that we're not only translating the meaning of words, we are also translating feelings and thoughts that are expressed in a specific language. And each specific language is tied or is the result of a specific culture and different necessities. So translating is not only saying word for word, but it is also trying to transmit a feeling or a specific thought. Within translation, we have literature, cultural studies, gender studies, science, history, all types of texts that when they are translated, they can either keep their essence and keep the messages that the original person wanted to transmit, or it can be lost through translation. That's why equivalence is such an interesting term to consider, since it is the base of many theories, and it consists on, and it is a theory that is not specifically accurate. The history of translation shows to be very complex, since translation is an extremely broad study that has been around for many years. In a simple manner, we can say that each of the translation theories that we have studied were formed by specifically each practice and ideas that were dominant in a specific period of time and culture. That way, each theory reflects where each culture stood translation-wise at the time. In this case, I am going to talk about the theory known as equivalence. As the word says, equivalence refers to the fidelity of keeping the text intact when translating from one language to the other. This obviously shows a difficulty, since we have to keep in mind that each language is not the same. All languages are different, since languages are the reflect of a culture in text. This way we can know that no language is equal to another language. One would assume that equivalence would be easy enough to understand, since many people believe that languages are simply equivalent to each other, and you just need to replace one word from one text in the original language to the word that it's equal to it in the text from the target language, which is not true. Because languages reflect on culture and they are so different. You cannot always replace one word with another word and keep the same essence and meaning of the text. In this case, there are many instances where one word does not have a direct translation in a target language, and you cannot also take the same word and replace it with the equivalent word without taking into account the meaning of those words in said culture. So we also have to look at the meaning and emotion that wants to be translated when changing one text to the other. The term equivalence became very common with the translation theories. especially during the second half of the 20th century. This was because equivalence it's considered the baseline for many theories, since it sounds very simple. However, Mary Snell Hornby rejects this theory. She simply referred to the concept of equivalence as claiming that this theory shows a non-existent equivalence between two different languages, without considering, of course, the cultural aspect. And she simply discarded this theory as valid. Of course, the theory is more complex than that, since it does not only mean that you have to translate things exactly, but that you have to find the closest meaning to each word. The very earliest version of this theory can be traced back to Cicero, and as a real and tangible concept itself, it can be traced back to 1858 by Binet and Dalbernet. Along with them, many other theorists like Jacobson, Catford, Nita, and Tabor also contributed to the conceptualization of this theory, making it what it is today.